This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, everyone. Today is August the 19th, the year 2020. It's 9 a.m. I'm calling this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Present.
John North,
Present.
Lane Lewis,
Present.
Blake Tresson,
Here.
and President Cox.
Yes. Okay, first item is the Pledge of Allegiance. Seeing as how I see Lane in plain sight, why don't you lead us in the pledge, Lane? Need your mic.
I thought I could just mute it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
States of America. And
under
to the
God, independent, with liberty and justice for all.
There you go.
Amen.
Okay, first item on the agenda, as always, is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the board on any item not on the agenda, we give 5 minutes. Anyone, public comment?
I have two people that I'm aware of that would like to address the board. And then I also see a third raising their hand. I have Janet Atkinson, who submitted an email to the board. Janet, if you're present, if you would like to go ahead and go first.
Thank you, Rochelle. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Hello, dear TTSA board members. I wish to make a public comment. My name is Janet Atkinson, and I am a resident of Truckee. In the last edition of Moonshine Inc., July 9th to August 12th, there was an article that has brought a lot of worry and concern to my household. As a local resident and mother of two, my family enjoys spending time at the edge of the Truckee River, and we have many friends who do the same. However, I cannot shake the news of repeated discharge violations. The Truckee River is beautiful. It is an asset to our community, providing a life source to biodiversity and a heart source to people. Though TTSA provides a crucial service to the public by filtering and processing sewage, TTSA should keep the Truckee River watershed free from related pollutants. That said, I must register my concerns about the agency's discharge violations that could include inexcusable levels of pH, bacteria, and affect the water's clarity and the health of the life that interacts with the river. Over the years, I have been a casual observer of the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency. I have not known anyone who works there, but the articles in Moonshine Inc. have stuck with me, and they paint a picture of a toxic work culture. Today, there are movements for justice where people demand answers and push forward beyond business as usual. Many times, calls for change and transparency come only after we see a system in failure. At TTSA, one can see how patterns of multiple discharge violations without consequences could be related to patterns of pervasive culture of workplace dysfunction. Could the next step in this translate to endangering people and the environment? As leaders of the board overseeing this agency, you should be accountable for what's going on there. I believe that the people of Truckee love our river too much to let the discharge violations pile up month after month. In the same way that wastewater is purified to a degree where the surface and groundwater integrity is protected, So should your integrity as a governing board for TTSA be strong and our community be protected. Please do the right thing and take corrective action on TTSA's inadequate leadership and dangerous discharge violations. Thank you.
Janet, thank you very much for your comment. Rochelle, can you see to it that her comments are entered into the record?
Yes, sir. She also emailed that comment to me prior to the meeting, so I will enter it into the record. Also, I have 3 additional people who would like to make comment. Second is Mr. Pippin Mater. After Mr. Mater is Carl Davis, followed by Aaron Carlson. And looks like there's another gentleman raising his hand, Anthony Anselmi. So Anselmi will be.
Rochelle, I'll go ahead and go a little later in the public comment process, if that's okay with you guys.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Then we'll move Pippin to 5th. And go ahead and put Mr. Davis 2nd. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Good morning. I'm here because Mr. LaRue Griffin is scheduled for a review today by this board of directors. I wish for this board to see that Mr. Griffin is unfit to continue serving as general manager of TTSA. My intentions are to show that through fact checking and public records requests, not conjecture or opinion, Mr. Griffin needs to be held accountable for his actions and decision making. From day one of Mr. Griffin's employment, he has failed to serve as a leader for TTSA. I met Mr. Griffin on his first few days employed as general manager. In the early part of 2015, my wife, who was then my fiance, was being sexually harassed by Chief Operator Chris Aiello. Mr. Aiello wrote her love notes, made repeated love requests, frequently came into work with his shirt off, and entered my wife's vehicle without permission to tell her how much of a man he was. Mr. Aiello even went as far as to purchase a $3,000 bathtub for her as a birthday gift, and then asked for her home address to have it delivered. Mr. Griffin, do you remember how furious I was when General Manager Beals first suggested that my wife be locked in her office so that Mr. Aiello could not access her at work? Mr. Griffin, do you remember sitting there next to General Manager Beals in the same room with me during that meeting in May of 2015? Through a public records request, I found that from 2008 to 2016, Senior Shift Supervisor, Chief Operator Chris Aiello received only 1 harassment, discrimination, violence prevention training, which took place in 2014. I did not see that Mr. Aiello received any further education. Mr. Griffin, could you please send me the documentation of the legislature and standards that you are adhering to regarding your harassment, discrimination, violence prevention program? Your program appears to be out of compliance, and I noticed that you have not reviewed your personal required training since 2016. Mr. Griffin, since you are the general manager, how did you handle my wife's sexual harassment case? As far as I know, Mr. Aiello received minimal punishment and was told to come to work fully clothed. Mr. Griffin, did you follow proper procedure for handling sexual harassment claims as outlined in the state of California? Did you notify both parties in writing of the outcome of your extensive investigation? From January 1st, 2010 to May 13th, 2015, TTSA reported in its monthly board morning meetings minutes a grand total of 1 violation. This occurred on March 10th, 2010. From May 13th, 2015 to present day, TTSA reported in its monthly board meeting minutes a whopping 10 violations, a 1,000% increase. Mr. Griffin, May 13, 2015, as you know, is your first day as general manager on the meeting minutes. Even more interesting, these violations all started occurring in the few short months after Operations Superintendent Dave Robertson retired. Mr. Griffin, what is going on here? More importantly, why is no one from this board of directors asking questions about this insane increase in violations? Mr. Griffin, may I remind you that the Lahontan watershed is an amazing place. The Water Board's website states that it covers over 33,000 square miles of eastern part of California from the Oregon border to the Mojave Desert. It encompasses 700 lakes, including Lake Tahoe and Mono Lake. It is home to 10 Native American tribes and over 3,000 miles of rivers and streams. It has the highest point in the United States at 14,505 feet, and it is the lowest point in the United States at 280 feet below sea level. Approximately 85% of these lands are federally managed and 77% of the region is undeveloped. This watershed must be looked after diligently and with the highest priority of standards and preservation. Mr. Griffin, why are you okay with accepting the lowest possible standard of education and experience with regards to our watershed environment? Under your management, you are training operators to perform functions of a chemist. The basic education requirement for an operator is a high school diploma, and the basic education for a chemist is a bachelor's degree in the field of chemistry. I'm not completely clear why you are accepting operators performing the tests of laboratory chemists. Why are you degrading modern methodology? I want properly trained and educated technicians to meet the current standards and certifications performing duties of a laboratory technician chemist. Over 8 weeks ago, the laboratory director resigned. Why to this day has the job position not been posted on the TTSA website? What have you accomplished in the last 8 weeks to prove in good faith that you are searching for a laboratory director? Mr. Griffin, I have asked many questions. I look forward to your response so that I can understand why you have chosen to conduct yourself in the manner you have. I hope that this board holds Mr. Griffin accountable for all of his actions since being appointed in 2015.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Rochelle, could you see to it that Carl Davis's comments will be entered into the record?
Yes, sir.
Okay, who's next?
Mr. Anselmi, would you like to go ahead and make your comment?
There we go. I got my mic, camera. All right. I'm going to echo a couple of the comments that I've already heard about this article in Moonshine Inc. I don't understand why there are consistent violations that are imperiling the Truckee River. I would have thought that the lessons from the eutrophication of Lake Tahoe 50 years ago would have given us some sort of idea of the stewardship role that we have. Why are there repeated violations? Do we need a new plant? Is this human error? What's the reason that we're having these issues? That shouldn't be insurmountable. I'll take my comments off mic. Thank you.
Okay, Anthony, thank you very much for your comments. Rochelle, could you see to it that Anthony's comments are entered into the record?
Yes, sir. So entered. And Pippin Mater, go ahead.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, TTSA board, thank you for the opportunity to comment this morning. My name is Pippin Mater, and I'm a TTSA ratepayer who's very concerned about what is happening at TTSA. First, I want to take a moment to make it clear that I'm not here because there's any possible benefit to me personally. Second, I want the board to know I'm not here to endlessly antagonize you. I understand that yours is a thankless job, and I pledge to be supportive of the board if you make positive decisions. That being said, I've attended all of your individual board meetings this month and was very troubled by what I heard in your updates. The information that was provided was verifiably incorrect. For example, last month's TSD board meeting, Mr. Tresson told his board tests done by the operators are simple, quote, probe and water tests. This is not true. As shown by the methods I sent to each of you, multiple of these are sophisticated tests and are not simple tests. Two of the tests are bacteria and turbidity, which are constituents that the agency has violated on within the last 2 months. If the information about the tests that are being performed comes from your GM, he misled you. Then, at last week's North Tahoe PUD meeting, Mr. Lewis touted a staff survey that Mr. Griffin assured him in last month's board meeting had already been conducted as part of the organizational assessment. No such survey was done or is planned to be done. Not only does the bid approved in December and updated last month not contain any reference to a survey, but without board approval, it would be illegal to perform one. The two rejected bids for assessments did provide surveys, but were not chosen. It appears that Mr. Griffin is being dishonest with you, as shown in the public board packet and included in my reference material. Finally, multiple of you also assured your boards that, quote, things are getting better at TTSA, and referenced the core values adopted last month as proof. The core values state that TTSA will treat everyone, including ratepayers, with professionalism and respect. 6 days after you adopted those core values, an email exchange between GM Griffin and HR Administrator Lafrano refers to me, a ratepayer, as, and I quote, shameless and sad. Mr. Griffin also emailed staff repeatedly to insinuate, without evidence, that I and other ratepayers were lying in our public comments and encouraged TTSA staff to, quote, seek and share the truth. Mr. Griffin is disrespecting ratepayers and trying to interfere with our First Amendment rights using public employee time. So far, I've used softer words to describe Mr. Griffin's actions: misleading, dishonest, lack of integrity, but they all mean the same thing. He is lying to you. Trust is an essential part of a board-GM relationship. Without it, you as board members have to independently verify everything your GM says, which I recognize is not feasible. Mr. Griffin's contract bans, and I quote, any intentional misrepresentation or fraud in connection with the performance of his duties. Mr. Griffin has been lying to you, and neither you nor the public continue to assume that he has the integrity needed to treat our sewage and protect the Truckee River. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Pippin, for your comments. Rochelle, would you see to it that Pippin Mader's comments are entered into the record?
Yes, sir, so entered. And final comment is Aaron Carlson.
Excuse me, Rochelle, in the notes, there's also a Mr. Steve Parson that would like to make comment. So maybe he can go after Aaron.
Oh, sure. Actually, Aaron requested to go last. Let me go ahead. Oh, we have a Mr. Harfo.
That's me. I'm Steve Parsons. That's my middle name.
Oh, Steve Parsons. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, my name's Steve. I am a local, but I'm not a ratepayer. I've taken a very active and keen interest in the operations and the management style, as well as the impacts to the environment that TTSA is aware of, is doing, and is not taking steps to ameliorate or mitigate. I have a blog that I've started. I'd like to let everybody know what the name of the blog is before I give my comments. The blog is called ttsatribune.blogspot.com, along with other outlets, journalistic outlets that have been involved in looking at the actions of TTSA. I hope to cover a wider spectrum and achieve a wider audience. And that includes the Paiute Nation. Again, it's called TTSA Tribune, all one word, .blogspot.com. If you want my individual email, I can give it to you later. But one of the things I'd like to start off with is an and this is directed to you, I believe, Ms. Chavez. Are you the HR director?
I am not.
Okay. Well, for the HR director, I'm assuming that everybody who sits on the board, as well as the management at TTSA, have their own curriculum vitae that they have prepared and is on record. And through a Public Records Act, I can imagine that that may be occurring in the very near future, that we are able to look at those curriculum vitae and see just what the actual experience, education, and background is for everybody who sits on the board, as well as Mr. Griffin and Mr. Peak, who's in attendance today, as well as everybody else who's on upper management. The other thing that I'd like to mention that I've noticed is that the board itself of TTSA is insular. They don't respond to anybody except the people who've either appointed them to their positions on the board or have somehow gotten elected via their own districts. I believe that there may be a move afoot in the future to approach LAFCO, Local Area Formations Commission, and try to change that appropriately so that everybody who's on the board will be elected, not appointed, elected, so that you are responsible to the ratepayers and not to the districts that you service. That is an insular, good old boy network BS that's going on. Finally, my last comment, I'm aware of, and I was party to in my previous employment, to be at least peripherally involved in one of the biggest water lawsuits that the country has ever seen, and one of the longest. And I imagine some of the old folks that still sit on the board may be aware of this. It was negotiated and came to an end, presumably, in the early 1980s. It involved the Tahoe watershed all the way down to all the way down to Pyramid Lake, and includes everybody in between. It involved the federal government. It involved the cities of Sparks and Reno. It involved Tahoe and the dam there in Tahoe City. And it was hashed out over 50 plus years. What TTSA is effectively doing by violating and not taking any recourse to take these violations seriously is to incur the wrath, I would say, let's put it that way, of the federal government via the Paiute Nation and everybody upstream of there, given the fact that the city of Reno and the city of Sparks takes their drinking water from Truckee River, excuse me. I am aghast at the lack of the ethics that has permeated this board since Oz Butterfield was the manager and president of the board. Given the fact that he also sat at the same time as president of the Lahontan Water Regional Control Board as its president, and he was president of TTSA. So you had a regulator being one of the regulated. If that's not a conflict of interest, I sure as hell don't know what is. And pardon my French. I'll end my comments there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dale, I think you're accidentally muted. If you could unmute yourself. I'm trying to do that for you and it is not working. There you go, Dale.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Rochelle, would you see to it that the last comments are entered into the record?
Yes, for Mr. Parsons, will do. And it looks like, let's see, I don't have any other. And except for Mr. Carlson. Mr. Carlson, if you would like to proceed with your comments.
Hi, my name is Aaron Carlson. I'm the senior engineer here at the Tahoe Truckee Sanitation Agency. I joined the agency in 2017. I've got 18 years experience as a civil engineer. I've sat on the national board for AWWA for their meter. And, I'd like to talk about my experience here at TTSA. What I've found here is that, LaRue Griffin, I found him to be an excellent general manager. Of the general managers that I've had the pleasure to work for and work with in my career, he's one of the best general managers that I've had a chance to work with. I also want to talk about the direction that the board is taking TTSA in. The direction that they're taking us in, it's a change. And it's good. There are people here that, and I'd say a minority, that don't like that change. And so in terms of a toxic work culture or workplace dysfunction, yeah, there are some people here that don't like that new direction that we're going in, but the direction that we're going in is the right direction for TTSA. It's the right direction for the Tahoe area. And there are a lot of people here who are working very, very hard to take that direction that the board has given us. And there's a lot of people here that are very, very happy with that. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carlson. Rochelle, would you see to it that the last comments are entered into the record?
Yes, sir, so entered.
Okay,
Rochelle,
LaRue, do you have a comment?
No, sir. I just wanted to add that we have a final comment, and Ms. Jane Davis has requested to speak as well. I just wanted to bring that to your attention, Rochelle.
Yes, I see that just now, 9:25. Ms. Jane Davis would like to make a comment as well. Ms. Davis?
Hi, my name's Jane Davis, and I just wanted to say I read an article in Shine Inc., and I do have some comments related to that. I've actually done a little research into TTSA, and as befits a public agency in the Tahoe Truckee area, it seems very well funded to carry the mission of being a high-quality wastewater treatment plant. So I guess I'm curious then, why you seem to be doing the equivalent of outsourcing your jobs to China and forcing your employees to train their replacement. I mean, you've got a full staff available to conduct your testing. Why train operators who, it seems to me, are doing operator jobs, take over this other highly skilled and extremely technical work? I guess the problem I've got is that when I ask myself that question, the only answer I seem to be able to come up with is that you must be trying to hide something. I mean, if you're having problems staying within your discharge permit requirements, do you honestly think that the solution is to get rid of the people with training and ethics?
I'm sorry, Ms. Davis. Davis, I'm sorry, you're breaking up. There's a little bit of interference on your end, appears to be. Go ahead.
Is the last commenter still online?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry, I'm not finished.
That's fine. Go ahead. You were breaking up. There's a lot of
Somebody suggested that maybe Director could mute.
Okay, I'll go
So
ahead.
maybe some other people need to mute their.
I only see two people who are not muted.
Should I?
Director Cox and Director Northrup. If you could try to mute your lines, and we'll let Ms. Davis finish her comment for just a couple minutes. Go ahead, Ms. Davis.
Okay. Okay. If the agency is having problems staying within its discharge permit requirements, do you honestly think that the solution is to get rid of the people with the training and the ethical gravitas to effectively monitor your operations? Do you think that letting the foxes guard the hen house is the solution to your problem with violations? Because if that's what you think, I think you've sorely misunderstood the values of the community that you're supposed to be serving. I strongly urge you to stop this misguided effort to replace your skilled lab workers with lesser qualified operators. I don't think our community is going to put up with it. Thank you.
Rochelle, would you see to it that the last comments are entered into the record, please?
Yes, sir, so entered. And I do not see any other comments on the chat or via email, and that is all I have.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to close the public comment and move on with our agenda. We'll go to section 3, professional achievements, awards, and anniversaries. Go ahead, Vicki.
Good morning, President Cox and directors. As usual, I would just like to acknowledge staff for their achievements, awards, and anniversaries. In addition, we have a new employee to introduce. Our new, the maintenance, because both of these employees are from the maintenance department, they are sitting with the maintenance manager, Richard Palante, and I would like to acknowledge them through the video meeting. First off, we have Tanner McGinnis, who is our new maintenance supervisor, and he began here at TTSA in August of 2020. Welcome, Tanner.
Thank you.
And then second, we have a 15-year anniversary of Jim Redman, who is a Mechanic 3, and he's celebrating that anniversary here in August of 2020. And it appears that maybe he's not there with Richard, but nonetheless, great job, Jim, and congratulations. Thank you.
Any other anniversaries or achievements, Vicki?
No others, President Cox. Thank you.
And thank you very much for Jim Redmond and our new employees for doing an outstanding job. And we're looking forward to our new employees being part of the team. I'd like to move on to the financial consent agenda items 1 through 5. If everyone has had a chance to review these items and find them in order, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve the consent calendar items 1 through 5, finding that they all meet agency requirements.
I'll second
We
that.
got a motion on the floor. We need a second.
I'll second.
We got a second from
Okay.
Dan. Okay.
So roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Trinan,
Yes.
Wayne Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving along to our regular agenda, section 5. We have a report from the July 15th, 2020 closed session meeting. LaRue, would you like to head up this section?
I would. If I may, Director Cox, prior to commencing with every other line item on the regular agenda, I'd like to reference the page number that would be on the electronic format for those that don't have a printed copy. So for item 1 would be page 43 of 378. So if you would pause and allow me to state that number, I would appreciate that, Dale. As to line item 1 for the report of the July 15, 2020 closed session meeting, at the conclusion of the meeting on July 15, 2020, the board of directors, the meeting was adjourned without providing a report from closed session. I will report that there was no action taken during that closed session. Nothing else on item 1, Dale.
He got muted again. Dale, you want to unmute?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, LaRue. Moving on to item number 2, approval of the, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Do we need a roll call on that?
No, there's no action to approve.
Okay. Approval of the agency telecommuting policy. LaRue?
Yes, so for that, it would be page 44 of the 378. Ms. Vicki Lafrano will head that up. Please proceed, ma'am.
Good morning again, Director Cox, President Cox and directors. As you're well aware, the agency employee handbook became effective in April 2020. Excuse me. As we approach an administrative office remodel this fall, we will have several employees that will be displaced for a couple of month period, and therefore we foresee the need for a telecommuting policy. The attached policy or the following policy represents the agency's desires in communicating that policy to staff. The recommendation is that that there be approval of the agency telecommuting policy.
Any comments from the board of directors?
I have one comment, just that for the security and the information that the telecommuting, when it takes place, that this is for council here, all that, that becomes record for TTSA. There's nothing that can be, that's all public information on the telecommuting if they're doing it at home, correct?
That is correct, Lane. If an agency employee chooses to use his or her personal computer or personal gadgets for agency business, the data stored on those devices are public records, and that is a complicating factor when one telecommutes and uses personal devices.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we've complied with the Public Information Act with regards to this policy. Have we?
And the key thing is for agency management staff to advise people to use appropriate servers and store on the cloud-based system you got, and make sure that documents are stored properly so they are retained as a public record properly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other comments on the approval of the telecommuting policy? Anyone?
I'll make the motion that we approve the telecommuting policy.
I'll second.
Motion, need a second.
I'll second.
Rochelle? We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Moving along. Approval of agency accrued paid time off, a donation policy. LaRue.
Thank you, President Cox. This is on page 50 of 378. Vicki Lafrano will lead the discussion and the action item for the accrued paid time off donation policy.
Thank you. Again, as the board is aware, the agency adopted its new employee handbook effective April 2020. And when deemed necessary and as time allows, standalone policies may be added as enhancements to the employee handbook. The accrued paid time off donation policy allows employees to donate accrued leave hours to other employees who are experiencing catastrophic illness or injury in their lives and have exhausted their own accrued leave. The policy sets forth the procedure and eligibility to donate and receive accrued leave hours. Management and staff recommend the approval of the agency accrued paid time off donation policy.
With that being said, are there any questions or comments from the board of directors? Go ahead, Blake.
I think this is a great policy, a nice safety net for the staff. I just had one question: is the hours are traded on an hour basis, not a value basis? If an employee who's accrued a lot of sick or vacation time is a highly paid employee, those hours have a higher value than if they're donating it to somebody else, and conversely the other way around. But it's all done just on an hour basis, not on a value basis, right?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any further questions or comments from the board members?
I'll move approval for I think it's a great policy, and let's do it.
I'll second.
Okay, it's a motion on the floor by Lewis, seconded by Director Northrup. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
Don Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and Director Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item number 4, approval of the updated laboratory director classification description. LaRue, can you help us out with this?
Actually, that is, I'm sorry.
This would be page 55 of 378. Prior to advertising for the position of laboratory director, similar to other job classifications that are amended, they are brought forth to the board. So what we have here is an amendment to the laboratory director. Ms. Vicki Lufrano will address the updated classification description and address any changes in that.
Good morning again. As you see before you, we have an approval or an updated laboratory director classification description. And as I believe you are aware, we had a recent vacancy occur with the laboratory director position. And as a result, we took a look at that position before beginning the recruitment process, and we're able to add some additional language, add and or amend some additional language. So within the laboratory director job classification description, we have added language related to the new and upcoming TNI standards. We remove language related to the laboratory reporting of results as it relates to ELAP requirements, as the CPO is the position that performs this function. We've incorporated preferred ELAP terminology, changed the minimum overall experience and supervisory experience. Agency management and staff recommend the approval of the updated laboratory director classification description.
Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Lane.
Yes, Vicki, does by these new changes, is it a greater? Are we asking for a greater requirement in that new position than what was there previously? We're not lessening the requirements.
We have not lessened the requirements. We have increased the experience to 6 years of responsible experience and 3 years from 5 to 6, and increased from 2 to 3 the years of supervisory experience. However, we have also added, in lieu of the minimum educational requirements, the candidate must possess a CWEA grade A lab certification, and that is consistent with ELAP's requirements for the laboratory director.
Okay, so basically you're saying we are increasing the qualifications for this position.
I'm sorry, one more time, Lane.
So you would say we are actually upgrading and asking for more qualifications for that department head, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, we're not lessening it, we're increasing it.
That is correct.
Okay, and two, on this NELAC, or National Environment and Laboratory Accreditation Program, I mean, that's not something new. That's what we required before, correct? That they
Wayne,
have.
I'm sorry. Can you say that one more time?
Okay, that NELAC, or the National Environment Laboratory Accreditation Program, that was current with what the last lab position was, correct?
I think we're talking ELAP.
Okay, ELAP, sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, that's what I was hung up on.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, so yes, the ELAP requirements are consistent as they have been in the past.
Okay.
And the job description does reflect ELAP's requirements of the laboratory director position.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, and that that the position we're increasing the requirements, not lessening them. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion?
I do have a public comment on this.
Go ahead, public comment.
Thank you. Thank you, board. Again, my name is Pippin Mader, and thank you, Lane. I think that your comment is exactly apropos to this discussion. I am commenting to express my concern about the recommendation that the laboratory director job description be updated so that the educational requirement of a bachelor's degree in science field can be ignored if the person holds a non-educational certificate. This represents a pattern from Mr. Griffin of repeatedly hiring people for top posts at the agency who have no education in their field and who do not meet industry standard qualifications. The agency updated all their job descriptions 8 months ago after paying Bryce Consulting almost $50,000 to bring them up to industry standards. There is no reasoning provided here from staff about why the job description would need to be updated for the third time this year in order to reduce the educational requirement below industry standards. In addition, the position of laboratory director oversees chemists who are required to have an applicable science degree with no in lieu language. In fact, the agency recently adopted an EER that puts the chemists in a separate 6-person professional bargaining unit based on the degree requirement of their job. As a ratepayer, I request that the board of directors require the best and most qualified staff for highly paid agency positions, and that you vote against approval of this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Would you see that Mr. Mader's comments are entered into the record?
Yes, sir. So entered.
I have a public
Okay,
comment.
thank you.
There's also an additional from Ms.
Go
Jane
ahead,
Davis.
LaRue.
There's also another request to speak from Ms. Jane Davis on the matter.
Okay, and we have another comment?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, Rochelle. I don't know if you're able to see the screen at the same
I
time.
see it, Jane Davis. And
Okay.
Another
Go
board.
ahead, please.
Yes, I would just like to, yes, I would just like to echo that I don't understand why you would be reducing director. It seems preposterous that you would have somebody without a degree in that position.
Any other comment? Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, I was wondering if LaRue or Vicky or perhaps Mike, the folks who oversee this position, could address the educational, the in lieu of the degree, and why the decision was made to go with that.
Vicky, if you would explain the requirements set forth by ELAP, and Michael Peak, if you would like to add to her comments, and if there's anything else, I can close that matter.
Sure. ELAP requires that a lab, in order for an agency to designate a laboratory director, that the lab director must possess at least a bachelor's degree in several sciences, which are listed, have at least 3 years experience in the analysis of wastewater, for example, and can substitute some of those years for a master's degree. However, in lieu of those things, ELAP also designates that a laboratory director at a wastewater treatment plant laboratory may fulfill those requirements for the lab director by possession of a lab analyst certification through CWEA, and that those requirements are, they must meet a grade 3 certification requirements. And therefore, that is the way we have listed it here on the job description. So while it is not our intent to reduce the requirements of the lab director, we did not want to exclude individuals from being able to apply and qualify for the position based on ELAP's qualifications for a laboratory director. And
Vicki,
Michael or LaRue, if you have anything more to add, please do so.
Vicki, can you remind us what ELAP stands for again?
Yes, environmental. Well, you guys might have to help me out here. Environmental Laboratory
Accreditation Program.
LaRue or Michael, can you tell me? Michael,
Yes,
Michael P.
The Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Program.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
It is the organization that determines our ability to perform testing and to provide the test to the state of California.
Okay, so that's either a state or a national organization that puts forward recommendations as to proper qualifications for laboratories for wastewater treatment plants, among other things.
Correct. So
and their recommendations provide either a combination of education and experience or on-the-job experience with accreditation as being appropriate ways for a person to gain the knowledge necessary to be a director for a lab such as ours.
That is correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want to add anything, Michael?
I have nothing to add at this time.
I have 2 more people with public comment.
Blake, are you wanting to make a comment?
Yeah, just another question. So we wouldn't require a CWA grade 3. I mean, the education there. You know, I just know that when we hire operators, you know, they have to have that CWA certification or the ability to possess it within, I think, a certain period of time. It seemed like an additive item as opposed to a, you know, optional item. Did the former job description did not include any CWA certification requirements at all?
Yes, it did require a CWA grade 4 laboratory analyst certification, and we are still requiring that of a future person to fill this position. If they don't have it at the time of appointment, then they can achieve it within 18 months, approximately 18 months or 3 testing cycles.
Okay, I see that. That's down lower on the page.
And Lane has a comment.
Go ahead, Lane.
What I'm seeing here, basically, we're increasing the experience requirements from 5 to 6 years in that job, and 3 years from 2 years for you know, technical and supervisorily assigned. So that is that sort of making up the difference, more on-site experience as opposed to if they're in a different science as far as being what's required for that position?
The educational requirements remain the same within the same educational backgrounds, if that's what you mean, Lane. It's just we're increasing it from 5 years to 6 years. I'm sorry, I'm talking about the experience rather than education. So increasing from 5 years to 6 years in the educational, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, in the experience portion, but still experience within the same industry, which is analysis of water, wastewater, solid waste, hazardous waste, or environmental samples, which again is consistent with ELAP's requirements.
Okay, for LaRue or Michael, I mean, you've done this policy. I mean, this is what Vicky's a lot of work that she's done. Are we having a higher level chemist than what as far as the requirements and currently exist? Yes or no?
Do you want to take that, Mike, and then I'll follow up?
Can you say that one more time, Lane?
Okay, based, on this laboratory director's job title, with the changes that have been made, are the requirements greater than what currently exists in that lab director position?
For supervisory experience, it is greater, yes.
Okay, thank you. LaRue?
Additionally, we have more aligned the details of our conversation with ELAP. So what Michael said was correct, and Vicki said it was correct. We increased the experience requirement. We also allowed a greater pool by allowing them to substitute their years of experience for education, which is in line with the ELAP requirements for our laboratory director. All we did was reference their minimum requirements set forth for us to have a laboratory director here.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And we have 2 more public comments from Carl Davis. Oh, actually, we have Stephen Parsons and Carl Davis.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll go first since Carl has muted his speaker. So basically what I'm understanding from you folks is that the proposal on the table right now is that you're going to dumb down the education requirements of a technical person who's going to oversee people who have baccalaureate or higher degrees in the technical fields that they have trained in, and you're going to exchange supervisory experience which doesn't talk to this issue of technical competence, or on-site experience, which also does not speak to the issue of technical competence. And you're going to effectively have somebody who has maybe a high school graduate degree, maybe not, but somehow they've risen up from the ranks of an operator to a supervisory, and they're going to move into a laboratory position, and you're going to say that's going to be okay for them to oversee competent technicians, competent chemists, that they're going to be reporting or even a federal level. I see that as stupid. I see that as dumb. I see that as lowering the requirements of a facility that was at one time known to be a very high quality, good workplace to go to and do a quality job. And what you're asking now is that the board vote on a dumbing down of the regulations or the threshold for requirements. I think that is crazy. That's my comment. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Carl Davis.
Next comment, please.
Yeah, so I just want to be clear, I appreciate Mr. Lewis's questions. I think he's moving in the right direction. Certainly, Mr. Lewis, I think that your question is being answered in that, yes, they are raising the standard. They are saying, yes, we can do this, but we still are going to dig from the bottom of the barrel because we can, right? We can choose somebody who has just experience, right? But we're not going to choose to pick the person that has the correct education. That's what's at stake here. So I'm just curious if, certainly this seems to meet the guidelines for the current ELAB regulations, but the new T&I standard takes effect in October. And this agency has shown that they sit on their laurels. You've got 3 years to come in compliance with the new T&I standards. So does this move align yourself with those standards and for the future of this agency? That's what I want to know, because you've given yourself this amazing bar. You said, look what we're doing, but we're going to choose to go with someone else. I've been lighting candles and blowing out matches all my life, but that doesn't make me a firefighter.
Okay, Rochelle, could you see to it that the previous comments are entered into the record, please?
Will do. So
Any other questions or comments in regards to this agenda item? Anyone? Go ahead, Blake.
Just seeking clarification. So the positions that are overseen by the laboratory director, those of chemist 1, 2, and 3, do they have the same option of having a degree or just CWA certification, or are they required to have a college degree?
Just going off of memory, Blake, it is my belief that the chemist job description does not require an educational component. However, we do ask for that educational component or a number of years experience or any combination of experience and training that would provide that same information. And again, I'm just going off of memory. I believe that to be correct, but I don't have the data in front of me. LaRue or Michael, do you know any different?
I believe at present the chemistry is written like the laboratory director position was written, that it has a degree requirement, but you can also fill that position with experience and CWA certification, if I'm recalling correctly. And again, we are aligning ourselves with the ELAB recommendations and qualifications. And I can answer to the new TNI standards that will be adopted in 3 years. This is still in alignment with the TNI standards that are to be adopted in 2023 of October. Does that help clarify, I hope?
I'd like to encourage the board to double check that, because that is not what's in the current job description requirements for the lab staff.
Yeah. Hey, Dale, I've got a question, just a process question on how we want to handle public comment. Whether we're going to have kind of free-form dialogue between the board, the staff, the public, or whether we're going to have whether public comment's still open or if it's been closed.
Well, I'll tell you what, Dan, in regards to discussion around the lab director, I think that anybody in the public wishing to ask any question of LaRue and staff may do so. Although I do not want to see this board meeting turn into a tit for tat discussion. Everybody is going to have an opportunity to speak, and if a contributor from outside the agency wants to speak, they will be able to sit back and listen to a response from the appropriate staff, Dan. But what I don't want to have happen is I don't want to see this board meeting turn into a round robin discussion. Does that answer your question?
Not quite. I think what I'm curious about is if you want to make sure we get all public comment and then close public comment and bring it back to board discussion, or if you want to, because I think that would reduce the likelihood of this being a round robin discussion as compared to if you keep public comment open. And my question was how you wanted to run that topic.
Well, I want to see whoever asks a question from the public get an adequate answer from members of TTSA staff or management. So,
okay.
As far as allowing it to be a round robin discussion, that is not the case. However, I want to make sure that whoever is taking the time to address the board and has any questions about the procedures of the agency, that it is answered by a member of staff or management. Copy?
Okay.
Okay, so right now we are finishing up the discussion of the lab director's classification description.
President Cox, may I? Oh.
Go ahead. We have any further comments from the board of directors? Seeing none, hearing none. Are there any further comments from staff?
President Cox, I would just like to comment. I have been able to pull up the job description for the Chemist 1, 2, 3 series. And regarding Chemist 3 specifically, and we could go through 1, 2, and 3, but regarding 3 specifically, it states any combination of experience and training that would provide the required knowledge and abilities is qualifying. A typical way to obtain the required knowledge and abilities would be 2 years experience, 2 years of responsible experience similar to Chemist 2 with TTSA, and equivalent to a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university with major coursework in biology, microbiology, chemistry, environmental science, or a related field. Additionally, one of the requirements is a possession of a CWEA grade 3 certification, and that's within 3 testing cycles or approximately 18 months. So even that position would allow for the agency to determine that the experience, the combination of experience and knowledge. And I guess I would just state that during a recruitment process, we would obviously look at any qualified applicants, determine their suitability as it pertains to those education and experience requirements, and treat everybody as fairly as possible through the recruitment process.
LaRue, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that we have improved the job description here. I think to insinuate that we are no longer requesting or wanting someone without a college degree is an inaccurate statement. All we've done is expanded the eligibility in alignment with ELAP. We did not make the rules for ELAP. They had published them themselves. They have listed the requirements of the job director. All we have done is copied them. And we will go through the appropriate process when we start searching for applicants. I have nothing else to add, sir.
Okay, if there's nothing else to be brought before this agenda item, I ask for a motion to approve.
I so move.
It's been moved by Northrop. We need a second.
Second.
Been seconded by Wilkins. No further discussion.
Wait a second. I got just one other thing. Okay. From what I'm hearing, this looks like we are expanding the requirements we're not lessening the requirements for this. We're increasing the requirements for this position. Correct?
LaRue?
Yes,
That's great
Dale,
work.
Lane, we are expanding under the experience. If you reference the document, the changes are identified in red. Under experience, which would be the fourth page, we have increased it 5 to 6 years of increasing responsibility, increasing responsible experience, including an increase from 2 to 3 years of providing technical and functional supervision over assigned personnel. Education, we are still leaving in there the requirement of a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university. However, we did add, in lieu of the minimum educational requirements, a candidate must possess a CWA grade 3 laboratory analyst certificate, which is what is allowable per the ELAP regulation. Moving forward to the special qualifications, they are still required. There has been no change for the certification requirement to have a laboratory analyst certificate. So no decrease in requirement there. They are still required to meet the grade 4 laboratory analyst certificate obtaining in 18 months. So to answer your question, Lane, for the requirements for special qualifications and experience, those have been increased. Which again are identified in red, are to align ourselves with the recent discussion we have had with ELAP to make sure we are now more in line with their definition of a laboratory director.
Okay, thank you. I mean, ELAP is the biggest issue, and that's been met. And we're asking for more work experience, which is the greatest training method in there. So, thank you.
Go ahead, Blake.
I just have a suggestion. I know the motion's been moved and seconded, but would it be possible to add in the highlighted or the red section some intention, not requirement, but that just says in lieu of the minimum educational requirements, which are highly desirable, which expresses an intention of the district to want a degree, the candidate must possess that. I know that it doesn't require the degree with that, but at least expresses the intention of the district to desire the candidate to have it. Might help appease the community's concern that there's a desire for us to perhaps go out and hire somebody without a degree, that it is desired, just not required if they have this CWA certification. So I would like to, procedurally, I don't know if I can amend the motion to include that statement in the job description.
Okay, Counselor, Blake is asking that that we amend the job description or the motion. Which is it, Blake?
Which is highly desired.
Yeah, I'm recommending that we approve the job description, but amended to include the statement in lieu of the minimum educational requirements, which are highly desirable, the candidate must possess, as written, adding that one additional sentence.
So, the easiest way to proceed would be to ask whether the director who moved and seconded consent to that phrase being added to the job description.
Okay. With that being said, we have an amendment to the motion. Does all the directors approve of Blake's amendment to the motion that has been approved and seconded?
Yes, I'll move approved motion.
Yeah, I'm okay with that too, Dale.
Okay.
Okay, so basically we have an amended motion on the floor that's been approved and seconded. No further discussion, no further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
And Director Cox.
Yes.
Amended motion approved.
Okay, moving along to item number 5.
Point of question, comment.
Award
Point of
the
question,
bid
comment.
of the 2020 administration building remodel. Go ahead there, LaRue.
Oh, you're muted.
I apologize. I heard someone state they had a question. I didn't really understand, or I didn't know who it was or the context of the question. Would you like
That
me
was
to?
me.
Item?
Steve Parsons. Steve Parsons has a question. Point of question.
Would you like Mr. Parsons to ask his question, President Cox?
Who's talking?
Steve Parsons.
Rochelle, you got to help me. I don't.
Steve Parsons. I'm not sure what his question is regarding, Mr. Parsons. What is it? Your question in regards to?
First part of the question was, I thought the vote was just on adding the amendment, not approving the whole thing. And second, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It was to approve including the amendment.
I'm
Yes.
sorry that I should have asked for a point of question prior to that. That's my fault. But
Okay.
under the CWA accreditation then, for somebody who does not have the educational experience, does the CWA require third-party proctored proficiency tests in all aspects of the laboratory function prior to getting that accreditation through CWA? That would go to Mr. Peak, I believe, to answer. He should know that. He's direct supervisor of the lab, right?
I think we've closed all public comment.
Yeah, we're moving along to another agenda item.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, what about the admin building remodel project, LaRue?
This would be on page 6178. Approval to award the bid for the 2020 administrative building remodel project. Mr. Parker will address the item with the board of directors.
Morning, directors. Yeah, on the admin building remodel project, we received 3 bids. The lowest bid was Bruce Purves Construction. Second low was Diamond G Construction, and third low was CNW Construction. The lowest bid we considered as non-responsive, as they did not adhere to the requirements in the bid. So the recommendation is to award the second low, Diamond G Construction, in the amount of $245,216.95.
So, question?
Yep.
Go ahead, Lane.
Yeah, so, okay, so the first by Purvis Construction was, the bid was non-compliant, is that correct, council?
Yes, non-responsive to be precise.
Okay, so that being deleted, I mean, the thing I get is, and also the next, the Headworks project and roofing contracts, boy, we never get anybody local anymore. I guess they're too big of projects for local people, or the requirements too great.
So we reached out to a number of local contractors on the prior admin building remodel.
Right.
This is the office that we remodeled out in the front desk. And we did not get any bites locally on that. And as I recall, I think we reached out to about a half dozen contractors. And on that one, we had to basically reach out again and get proposals from people that were out of the area. On this, we've advertised to everybody. We've advertised to local and to call them regional contractors. And we got these 3, which were all non-local contractors.
Okay, but as long as you're reaching out to them and they're notified, I know we can't do anything because we got to accept the lowest responsible bidder, so it's good. Thank you.
Okay. There were a couple irregularities on the second low, but those were clarified during the bid process, so we recommend those be waived and awarded the second low.
I'll make that motion that we make the motion to approve Diamond G Construction as the lowest responsible bidder.
And I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion from the board or staff? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve. Roll call, please.
Ken Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion
Moving
approved.
along to the Headworks Improvement Project. Go ahead, LaRue.
Oh, you're muted, LaRue.
Apologize about that. This will be on page 62 of 378. And Mr. Park will also address the item to advertise for the 2020 Headworks Improvement Project. Thank you.
So before you again is the Headworks Improvement Project. This has been before the board a few times now for the various scoping for pre-design and design work and construction management. We are finally in a position where we have bid-ready plans and specifications. The work is to be performed in the field next summer and fall. The recommendation is to approve to advertise for the subject project.
I so move.
It's been moved by Northrup. Question or comment, Lewis?
Okay, under this project, during its work and being done, what type of, is the plant able to have enough bypass capacity while that's being done in through the Headworks project?
Yeah, so the contractor has been basically given some time windows in which he must perform certain work. The idea is that the contractor sets up bypasses for some of our flows that would otherwise have no alternative but to go through the headworks, i.e. the recycle flows.
Correct.
But yeah, for the other part of the flows, we've sequenced a work to avoid a major bypass of the main flow. The contractor always has that option to do that on their own accord. Yeah, all the bypass features and functions, if you will, have been engineered into the plans and specifications.
Okay, with regards to that, I mean, I don't want to be involved, you know, while the contractor's on the job doing the work. Bypass is part of the project bid, but that makes sure that that's included, that we don't get involved in the contractor's project during that project. That's all I'm concerned about.
Yeah, absolutely. We make it clear in our plans and specs for this type of project that any bypassing that needs to occur is on the contractor.
Okay, the contractor is responsible for that, not TTSA.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Blake.
Jay, thanks for answering the question regarding a bypass of sewer flows. I know the member agencies also routinely deliver waste solids to the facility in Vactor loads, and there's a discharge point for that near the headworks also. Will that be interrupted during the construction process?
So yeah, we had discussed that during our expansion project. We had an alternate Vactor site that is down at the other end of the plant that we're able to use. We also have the recycle system that the contractor would set up could potentially also recycle the Vactor load. So that's really will be up to Michael Peak as to how he wants to stage and sequence, whether they're using the alternative Vactor location or whether they're using the current one.
An additional question, President Cox, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
I believe at our previous board meeting, we approved a contract change order with Jacob/CH2M Hill, the designer of the plan set for the Headworks project, and that included their construction management work for this project. So we've already allocated those funds, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what length of bidding cycle are you going to have on this? When would we expect staff to come back to the board with a recommendation to award?
I believe it is the October board meeting. I'd have to look to be sure. This is a large project, so we wanted to give them a little more bidding time. But don't quote me on that. It's either September or October.
Thank you. No questions.
Okay, Jay, final question. Can we expect to see Pond A, that's the pond there that's on the grounds, to start filling up with effluent?
No, as kind of pointed to Lane's question earlier, that we're not responsible for accommodating any kind of bypass that might result out of the work. That isn't to say that another emergency comes up that we, would use Pond A, but yeah, there's no planned use of Pond A for this work.
Okay, what about the ponds that are visible from 267?
Likewise.
Those overflow emergency ponds?
Likewise, there's no planned use of those ponds for this work.
So we'll be able to process the effluent that's coming into the plant during the Headworks remodel or improvements in-house.
Yeah, I don't like the way that the flow will get to the plant could be a little bit different if they implement some of these bypass schemes, but the treatment is the same.
Okay. All right. So you're recommending that we move ahead with this change or with this improvement project?
Yes, I see that Lane Lane, do you have another question?
One other question, Jay. With regards, okay, once this project is completed, does the flow capacity, is that enhanced at all with this project?
Yeah, the flow rate per screen is increased. So we do have higher screening capacity. I wouldn't say we have a higher overall treatment capacity because we're on the scope of this job is only for the Headworks.
Correct.
Yeah, but we are taking into account future flows for the Headworks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we've got staff recommendation. Need a motion to adopt the improvement project for the Headworks.
I'll make the motion to adopt the improvement project for the Headworks.
I'll second.
Okay,
Second.
it's been moved by Lewis, seconded by Northrup. No further questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Just to clarify, it's not to adopt, but to advertise, correct?
Correct.
Okay, roll call. We have Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tristan,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion.
Next item. Next item is item 7. Approval to recertify the sewer system management plan. Go ahead, LaRue.
Thank you, President Cox. This is on page 111 of 378. Mr. Park will also be addressing the recertification of the SSMP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, LaRue. Yeah, so the SSMP is required to be recertified every 5 years. And we are up on our 5-year cycle. So we, as you know, we did an audit last year and changes are recommended on name changes, personnel changes, et cetera. But the SSMP is now before you for a 5-year recert.
Okay, questions or comments from the board? Seeing none and hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve the recertification of the sewer system management plan.
I
I'll
so
make the
move.
motion.
It's been moved by Northrup,
Second.
seconded by who?
Lewis.
Wait.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor in a second. No further questions or comments. Roll call, please.
Yes, you're muted, Rochelle.
Sorry about that. Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tristan,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Next item is item 8, approval for the purchase and installation of security cameras. What's up, Bob?
President Cox, this will, if you don't mind, Bob, I'll take this one.
Okay.
This is on page 292 of 378. What I'd like to do is ask that a map be presented on the presentation here so we can see the locations of the cameras. With that, Richard, I'll let you take over to share your screen and identify the maps.
Sure. Morning, President Cox and members of the board. Rochelle, if you can give me presenter.
Sure, let me get right in there.
Go ahead.
So before you, first let me start off by apologizing to the board of directors. I failed to include the overview map with the location of the cameras. Apologize for that. So we have the map here for you today to review. That's what's up on the screen. I'll start off in to the left of the map is the entrance to the facility, just to familiarize everybody with the layout. The top of the map would be the river side of the facility. To give you a little background on the current security system, was installed in 2005 as part of the BNR upgrade. It has had some additions through the years, including the 3 cameras on the river side that are referenced as little yellow boxes on the top of the map, which were done as part of the Truckee River Trail project. They're older version cameras, lower resolution. Many of them are limited view, and they're what's called a PTZ, or a pan tilt zoom. The restriction with those is if someone looks at it and aims it at a particular direction, it stays there, or has a return to home, but you end up missing vital coverage of the facility. The current system only includes 7 cameras, where the upgrade will include 28 cameras, both internal and external cameras. So just starting off with a quick presentation on what's out there. To the far left at the entrance, we have 2 cameras for entrance and exit. And then dropping down to the lower right, you'll see the blue dots are what represent the cameras, with a couple of exceptions, and the lower right is one of those exceptions. The 2 blue dots that are below the road were originally marked as being pole mount, which would include a new pole and trenching to get there. So to save cost, working with the security professionals, we came up with mounting them on the chlorine building, which is the 2 yellow boxes that you see near the chlorine building. And hopping up to the top of the map, you'll see in the corridor, we have 1 blue box there. Moving to the right, we have another yellow box. These are upgraded external cameras. Instead of a 90-degree field of view, these are going to be a 180-degree field of view. So it gives us complete coverage along the river. The box that's referenced inside the admin building is actually the server location. Project includes a new dedicated server with approximately 60 days of storage. As the management team and HR work to identify camera locations, we worked to identify what we thought was appropriate for the amount of storage. and we felt targeting a 60-day storage would be adequate to give us everything we needed to see in the event that an event took place and we needed to reference back to it. That is an average storage, as it depends on how much a camera is recording, so we'll have to monitor that as we move forward. Then we have a new external camera in front of admin that covers the admin parking lot and pond area. Moving to the right, we have another camera in the corridor. Another camera external that covers the employee parking lot. And then another corridor camera, still moving to the right. Then dropping down 2 additional corridor cameras. And then we have one in building 27, which is our main switchgear room. One of the scopes of this project were to place cameras at key infrastructure, being a main distribution for electrical. We felt that was warranted a camera. Then I'll drop down to the other rectangle box. It's got a plethora of blue dots on it. That is our warehouse. So those are multi-head cameras, so it saves us money in that there's one camera but it has multi-heads in it. They are drawn to show as individuals. One of those covers our liquid oxygen. And then dropping down to the lower right is the solids handling building. We now have coverage on our gasoline storage and diesel storage tank, as well as the road coming in for the haulers that are hauling our sludge. Continue moving to the right. Everybody can see that. Again, we have 2 yellow boxes. Again, was to replace the 2 blue dots that are on the lower portion, because that was identified as another pole mount location, and to save money, we can mount them on the building and pick up the same coverage. The 2 blue dots that are above the yellow boxes are our other main electrical distribution room. Then moving up, we have the one on the side of B&R, which covers methanol. And then we have one on the methanol building, which is the far right, that covers the pond area. And then finally up top is the last of the corridor cameras that picks up that whole corridor.
Do we have enough cameras in place to avoid photograph any bullying that might go on?
Yeah. Could you repeat that, John? I couldn't understand the last part.
Do we have cameras in place so that we can photograph any bullying that might take place?
We certainly, working with HR as we outline the camera locations, that was the intent of capturing some of the internal cameras. We don't have every internal or external place covered, even with these 28 cameras, but we have covered a large portion of the facility. So to say, do we have every spot covered for that? I would say no, but we do have far more than we have currently. Again, 60 days of server storage. Cameras are higher resolution. The price averages out to about $5,000 per camera. A large portion of that is the standalone server and then the licensing, because each camera has to be licensed. The labor approximates out to about 37 days of labor, which also includes training and programming, which represents about $35,000 of the project at a prevailing wage rate, which increased at $8,000 over the standard rate sheet. Again, we're able to utilize a Sourcewell contract to get good pricing on this project. That pretty much, I think, covers everything I had outlined. Is there any questions I can answer?
Yeah, I got a question. With regards to the outside areas within the plant, as far as for the safety of the employees, we pretty much have now, you know, I don't know, would you say 90% of the outside area covered? I mean, say we have an employee going up one of the stairs to the clarifier or something, and he slips on ice, falls back, and is incapacitated. Well, we have that, we have about 90% about, is that about correct as far as the outside surveillance within the plant?
With the new system or the existing?
With the new system.
I think 90% might be a little high because we don't have any of the secondary clarifiers on the old side or primary clarifiers covered with these cameras. We do pick up the new secondary area. I'd say maybe 60% would be a better.
Okay. I'm just concerned about the the safety of the employees on site. If something happens to them, we have, it can be seen. So.
Understood. Again, we can always build on the system as we go.
Yeah.
And add those areas. I think once we get this system up and running, we can then reevaluate, see what blind spots we have and where we want to improve.
Okay. My other question, I know this is we're talking about this contract with security within the plan. What about, I asked a question last time with regards to some motion detectors on our wells out there. So, if we got an animal, we got somebody messing with one of our wells, it'll click up and we have a recording of it.
That was not included in this project. This project, I've been working with Johnson Controls for several months now, and I think that came up after it started. It's something I can certainly bring them in and have them give us some options of what equipment's available.
Yeah, I just, it's just a question with regards to looking at making sure our wells are secure too. So, but this is security within the plan. I understand that. If we can ask that question of them, what they would recommend on it, I'd like to know.
Absolutely, I can do that.
Thank you.
Can we put that in the motion?
Any further discussion in regards to the security camera layout and protocol? Go ahead, Blake.
Yeah, hi, Richard or Bob. So will these cameras be accessible to all staff, selected staff, remote folks? If there's something comes up and someone's on call and is able to remote in off their phone or their home devices, how accessible is the information?
It can be set up however we choose to set it up. It can be remotely accessed if we desire to do that. We haven't had that discussion yet, but it can be done.
I know you guys are staffed 24/7. We use cameras at our site to, determine whether or not snow removal is required and stuff like that. Maybe not as big an issue with you having 24/7 coverage. You've got people on the ground that can respond to alarms and stuff that are already here.
Go ahead, anybody?
I'll make the motion for approval for the purchase and installation of this security camera project, and that we get some of those answers coming back to us with additional costs.
I'll second.
Okay, got a motion on the floor by Lewis, seconded by Northrup. No further discussion. Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
and President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved. And thank you, Richard.
What about this forklift, Richard?
Okay, I'm up again.
Before we proceed, Richard, I just want to let the audience know that now page 332. So you can proceed, Richard, to inform of the warehouse forklift.
Morning again, everybody. So before you is approval of a new forklift for the warehouse. You see in the staff report, the existing forklift in the warehouse is hit a 20-year mark. It is gasoline powered, where the new forklift will be propane powered, so much more suited for safe operation within the building, especially during the winter when you have the doors closed. This will allow us to transition that forklift over to operations for use to dump headwork today, and then auction off a 36-year-old forklift that parts are getting obsolete on, and quite frankly, it's just showing its age, 36 years of service. Again, we were able to utilize a Sourcewell contract that's available for a CAT forklift provided through Holt of California, which is a local dealer. Budgeted amount was $35,000. We came in under budget with it delivered. Can I answer any questions?
I'll move approval for the purchase of a warehouse forklift.
I'll second.
It's got a motion on the floor to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Anyone? I see none and hearing none. The motion on the floor and a second. Rochelle, roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
President Cox.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Let's go into the operations department and see what's going on. What's up?
President Cox, if you don't mind, I'd like to reference the page number. It is page,
Yes.
page 348. I also believe that there may be some interest in the public to provide comment during the department reports. I ask that you consider opening that up for public comment as well as needed. With that, I'll hand it over to Mr.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Thank
we
you.
will. We do have public comment for department reports and the general manager report.
Okay, first we'll move to Michael Peets in the operation department.
Good morning, President Cox, Board of Directors. The Operations Department report for the month of July. Compliance report. All plant waste discharge requirements were met for the month, except for a single final effluent turbidity result. On July 11th, 2020, the final effluent turbidity was recorded at 11.2 NTU, and the daily allowable maximum is at 10 NTU. The violation was reported to the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Lahontan Region. It should be noted, violation in turbidity is attributed to staff error rather than treatment process error, as a value on the sampling sink. A valve on the sampling sink piping manifold was found to be closed when it is typically open. When the valve is closed, it creates a buildup of sediment, which is siphoned by the automatic composite sampler used to collect the turbidity sample, which is what is assumed to have occurred. To confirm the assumption, the continuous turbidity meter at the same sampling sink location was used as a reference and calculated a 1.73 NTU average for the day, which is typical of past days. To prevent further similar violations, daily checks to the operations round sheet and SOPs have been amended to include a check of the piping manifold valving at sampling sink. Although not a reportable violation, but a testing requirement of the agency WDR permit, it was discovered that one of the required 5 monthly effluent alkalinity tests was not performed by lab staff in June, and the Regional Water Quality Board, Lahontan Region, has been made aware of the testing oversight. Operations report. Overall, the plant performed well through the month. Worked in conjunction with the engineering and maintenance department to comply with a variety of scheduled plant projects. Operations continues to train with lab chemists for weekend laboratory testing. Laboratory report. Per ELAP requirements, Kristen Davis was appointed as the laboratory director. Staff performed necessary laboratory testing per WDR requirements and operational needs for the month of July. 3 work work orders were completed, and we have 4 pending. Have any questions on, anybody have any questions on operations board report?
No.
We do have a public comment. Do we want to go ahead and have the board ask any questions before public or after?
I have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
Just the turbidity sample, Mike. Could you give me a little bit more detail where that was taken and what the purpose of it is?
Yes. So turbidity is clarity of water. So basically, we at the effluent, final effluent tailpipe, where we sample our final effluent. We have a final effluent sink where we have a composite sampler that takes roughly 8 samples a day, one about every 3 hours. It's considered a 24-hour composite, and we have limitation values that are attributed to that. I'm sorry, some of these I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Let me mute them again.
Okay. Anyway, we have limitations that are set at the effluent sink and at that composite sampler. We just replaced it about a year and a half ago with a new sample sink. And what we believe is through some maintenance procedures, whether it be looking at a chlorine residual analyzer or what a valve at the bottom of the sample sink, you can envision a PVC pipe that's about a 4-inch in diameter. And it has a constant flow off of our effluent flowing into it, and it passively overflows the top. And we've designed it to also flow out of the bottom so that you get a representation of what the effluent is at all times through the composite sampler. The bottom valve got closed, and some sediment was able to settle out since it had nowhere to go. And as that composite sampler did its 8 samples through the day, it picked up that those solids, and then that showed up in the turbidity.
So that was 1 day during the past month, or that was
Yes.
one issue? Okay.
Yes. And all the other turbidity 24-hour composite samples around that were in the 2s and 3s. The day before was a 5, and the day after was a 7-8, which was within our compliance. And that was also during the time when that valve was closed. So you could actually see the solids building up in that. And as soon as we addressed that valve and opened it back up, the turbidity went right back down to a 2.2, 2.6, which is more representative of our effluent samples.
Okay, and then so that's where the effluent leaves the plant, but before it goes into the injection wells.
The disposal field, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Michael,
Yes,
Blaine Lewis, just, can you give us a case history, basically, with the Moonshine Inc. article that came out and the, in the pH violations we had? Just give me a brief, what you do, how we're reacting to it, and give us a little history.
Okay. So if the board remembers back, can go back a little ways, when we did the SAT rehabilitation study, we were having issues out in we were getting partial nitrification in the SAT system, our soil aquifer treatment system, and we were trying to rehab that system. During that period of time, we were bypassing ammonia around our ammonia nitrogen around our BNR system, which is designed to remove ammonia, because we were receiving free treatment in the ground where we were converting ammonia, and it was doing a full conversion, and basically you ended up with nitrogen gas as a byproduct of that conversion. If the board recalls, during that project, we started to see these lowered pH values as measured at well 31, and per our WDR, the requirement is that it meets between a 6.5 and an 8.5 pH units at that well. If if you recall through all our research that we did, what we had determined was that we thought that the partial nitrification, because when you only partially nitrify, you don't recover or get back your alkalinity when you do a full nitrification and denitrification. It typically, we thought that was suppressing the pH. And if when we did the research on what the pH violations were, we had 3 pH violations in 2016. We had 5 in 2017, 5 in 2018, 1 in 2019, and now 1 in 2020. So when you look back, it really is contributed to the what we thought was the trying to rehab the SAT system. So what we did, and the lesser pH violations that we've had, and I'll correct myself. Thank you, Carl. 2 in 2020. But you can see the reduction since 2016. We stopped bypassing any ammonia, nitrogen around BNR, and we're treating it all through that system. So we're putting as little ammonia, nitrogen out to the fields as possible in order to not suppress that pH. Just for an example, these pH violations that we are talking about are a 6.4 pH unit violation. Our requirement is to have a 6.5. We're talking about 0.1 tenths of a pH unit at a 6.5. I'll just give you a reference. Orange juice has a pH of 3.5. So it's a we've reported all these violations to Lahontan. We've put them in our board reports and reported them to the board. And Lahontan has said that they consider the minor violations with not impacting the environment. I can say that if you take that sample and you stir it on the stir plate, the pH continues to rise after that sample has been taken. So, I mean, it does seem like it definitely, the information has been put out that this is a critical or a large violation is not the case.
Michael, I continually take soil samples on my properties here. My pH is, if I'm by a fir tree, the alkaline there is 5.5. I can go 100 yards and it's an 8.0, depending on the trees and everything, because the alkalinity of a pine and fir forest lowers it. What is it above? Have we taken samples above the plant? And because
yes.
And what are they?
Upgradient wells, it varies from anywhere from 7.5 to 6.1.
Okay,
upgradient upgradient of our disposal system.
But how about above the property above the plant area? That is it?
That's what I'm talking about. Before, so the way the flow net goes, it's considered our upgradient well 24. We've had pHs as low as a 6.1 and as high as, I believe, 7.5 to an 8.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So Mike, that upgradient location, that's basically the pH levels of the naturally occurring groundwater at that location?
Yes.
And then the well where we've had the pH levels that were at 6.4, where the standard we're trying to achieve is 6.5, is that well, is that 100% effluent? Or excuse me, is it 100% water that originates from the plant, or is it mixed with naturally occurring groundwater?
It's mixed with naturally occurring groundwater.
Okay.
Okay, and then we have Carl had a public comment.
Yeah, Mr. Peak, I just wanted to correct your statement here. Miss Kristen Davis is the interim lab director. She is not the lab director. And I appreciate your justification to continue violation I'm just curious how long well 31 has been in place, the history of violations occurring at well 31, and why we've had a 1,000% increase in violations at well 31. But apparently it doesn't really matter because a 0.1% is okay in your mind. You just justified that. And I'm just curious, like you said that you have sediment in your final affluent valve. Why do you have sediment in your final affluent? Isn't that water supposed to be clean, valve open or closed? I'm just curious. I'm not understanding things.
Mr. Fink, before you answer, President Cox, did you want to receive all public comment first prior to returning back to board conversation?
You know what? I think that's a legitimate question is being asked by the public, and Michael can respond.
To the first part of your comment about Kristen Davis, she is the laboratory director for ELAP purposes.
She is the lab director for TTSA?
For ELAP purposes, for quality control for the lab. Yes.
That job description is the interim lab director. Please check your facts, sir.
What about your other question?
If you could move on to the second point, Michael, please.
What was your second point, Mr. Davis?
I was just making note of your justification to continue violating at a 0.1%. I think that's very interesting because the history, how long has well 31 been in place and the historical violations that have occurred there when since 2015, we've seen a 1,000% increase in violations occurring there. So between 2010 and 2015, you had one violation. So something has changed. Well 31 has been there since probably this was incepted, okay? There's a history.
So I explained that. I believe I already explained that. And I did not try to justify that at 0.1 pH unit, not trying to justify it, I'm trying to explain it, that it is a very minor violation. I'm not trying to take away from it. But
so you're not trying to fix it.
well 31 was not, the pH was not required and measured there until 2002 when our WDR changed when we did our last plant expansion. So before 2002, the pH was not measured at well 31 as a requirement. It was on our effluent pipe before it went out into the ground. When we, in 2002, changed our WDR to include SAT as part of our treatment process, the pH then changed to well 31. In around the 2010 period, something changed in the ground that created a issue with nitrification that had been naturally occurring and denitrification that had been naturally occurring in the ground. Something changed. To try to figure out what it was. We never came to a conclusion. But through that study, we found that it seemed that we were getting partial nitrification, which does affect pH. So in order to try to mitigate that and lessen it, and if you look at the history, the last 2 years, it has been decreased. We stopped putting any ammonia out to the ground for this natural nitrification, denitrification. That is how we've tried to mitigate and address the pH issue out at well 31. You've got to realize it's a large body of water under the dirt that is also impacted by other flow nets that come through that are naturally occurring waters. I hope that answers your question. The third one about the turbidity, I would say that there's always been, sorry, somebody's getting a lot of feedback. Okay, thank you.
It's Dan, I'm sorry, that was, yeah.
Dan, did you have something that you wanted to add?
I had just another question. So my understanding is that where the effluent comes out of the plant, it's obviously near the plant. That effluent then goes into the disposal field, which is effectively putting that effluent into the ground. And then well 31 is it like 3/4 of a mile or a mile away from our disposal field, if I'm not mistaken?
It's roughly a mile, yes.
So it's about a mile hydraulically down gradient from our disposal field. And what's happening is the effluent comes out of It comes out of the plant, goes into the ground. Generally, water flowing through soil is a good treatment mechanism. It's a natural treatment mechanism, and that's what's considered the tertiary treatment for our plant. The pH issue that you're referring to is one that's a mile down, hydraulically down gradient from where we're disposing of our effluent. You're doing what you can, that you've been able to brainstorm to try to bring the pH level up at that location that's a mile downstream from our effluent disposal location. And you're thinking that some of the steps you've taken may have had had positive outcomes on that. But the other thing that is at play here is we do have naturally occurring groundwater that's flowing through this whole system as well, that also has some influence in one direction or another on pH levels at that location that's a mile down gradient. Is that a fair summary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
I just want one clarification. The tertiary treatment actually happens in the plant. In the plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the fact that the effluent does not dispose directly to the river, the fact that it's disposed of in the soil provides yet one additional, polishing factor of safety, et cetera, in terms of our entire system out there. So, and the reason I bring that up is, some of the communication that I've seen out there could leave a person to believe that we're disposing of effluent with a tailpipe that goes directly into the river, and that there's a more direct linkage between our plant and the river than what actually exists. And I just wanted to make sure that that I'm clear in my own mind on the physics of this whole thing, so that if folks are asking me questions about it, I can give them accurate information. So thank you.
Yes. So I would like to make another comment. I've worked here for 25 years. I've been a proud employee of this place, of this agency for 25 years. The staff I work with are high quality. The operators, they care. My children have played in this Truckee River. I raised my children here in this community. They played in the Truckee River. I float the Truckee River. It is one of my top priorities. It's one of the operations department's top priorities to meet our WDRs and keep this environment safe and the community safe. Public health and safety is very important to us, and it really is. I kind of think, I feel like it's disheartening that people are making reference to the people that work here as not having integrity. And I can tell you today, the operators here, they care. They want to do a good job. They live in this community. And if they don't live here, they drink this water because it goes to Reno. They care. They have a vested interest in making sure that we clean this wastewater, protect this environment. I like I said, 25-year employee, and it's always been one of the top priorities here, is to look into how to do better and protect the environment and public safety. We have very stringent discharge requirements that have been set for us by the Lahontan Regional Wastewater Control Board because of the pristine waters. Some of our requirements are higher than drinking water requirements. We care. I implore you, please do not continue to try to put information out that is going to, as one of the comments in the morning was, that they're very concerned. We care, and we're trying to do the best job we can, and we gotta have people here who are great employees and want to do the right thing. So to my operators, to the operators, thank you for everything you do every day and the concern you take. I just want you to know you're supported. And I'll tell you too that a lot of our operators, they have degrees. They have biological degrees. They have science degrees. And we do have to have state certification to work in this agency. We have to take tests and be state certified. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Director Cox, if I may, I'd like to recommend that we return next month with a presentation from staff to further explain how our effluent monitoring is done, where we discharge, give some information on where it's taken, perspective behind this. So if I may, I'd like to put that on the agenda for next month. President Cox?
Yes, that, I see that to be in order.
All right, thank you, sir.
Yeah, and if we can, on that presentation, let's show some mapping. As far as how far well 31 is to the Truckee River, then we have the other creek coming down. I mean, it's a whole big area.
Most definitely, will do.
And we also have another public comment from Pippin Mater.
Thank you. I had a couple of comments. One was I agree that these limits aren't arbitrary and that there's a reason the pH is set between 6.5 and 8.5. So I think that, and there's a reason that is those bumpers are on there, not because they're guidelines, but because they're limits. I'd also point out, I assume you guys are all aware of what's happened with Pyramid Lake in the last month, where it turned white because of acidity. And of course, we all know that the Truckee River goes straight into Pyramid Lake. So you guys, that is the reason that this is not an arbitrary limit. This is real and has a real effect. I'd also like to say, I hear what you're saying, Dan, and I think that you're right. There is a lot of dilution that happens in the groundwater. But the upshot of that is, with all that dilution, with that final polishing step, there was still, the pH was out of bounds, right? And it's out of bounds because of the effluent going into the groundwater. And you can see from the topography that all the groundwater in that area is going to end up in the Truckee River, and how long it takes is 40 days or whatever it is. But that's a really important thing to keep in mind. I would also like to respond a little bit to Michael Peak. My concern that these violations are very concerning, and their reoccurrence is very concerning, as is their increase. And I understand what you're saying about denitrification in the field and that that's something changing. But I think that the appropriate solution to repeated violations would be to gather more information and to make informed decisions to prevent future violations. But instead, management has cut lab testing by 70%. So now essentially they're flying blind. And instead of ramping that testing back up so they can understand what's going on with the system, they're pushing again to have less experienced operators do the testing. It just doesn't, I'm a data-driven person. I want to see the data be collected correctly and then the correct solutions developed for those problems. Finally, I do want to also point out, back to the operators conducting the tests, that this concept of operators doing their own tests it's essentially they're doing their own oversight, which I think is unfair to them and a clear conflict of interest. It's kind of like saying, those of us that have digital speedometers in their car, we're going to have to write our own speeding tickets to ourselves because we know when we're speeding. And that really just isn't like, the concept fine, but the reality is it doesn't really work. And I encourage the board to push for those to maintain integrity of the lab results to prevent the eroding of the public trust. Finally, I want to mention a couple of things about the turbidity test. I guess I'm a little surprised that there's not kind of the standard method for air quality is to use isokinetic samplers, so that you get a representative sample of all constituents regardless of specific gravity. And that by having the valve or the sample port on the bottom or top, if you're not sampling at the same speed that the flow is going in the pipe, then you're going to inherently omit the denser objects, right? If you think about the rocks go by and the clearer water goes into the sample port. So that seems like, I understand what you're saying about collecting sediment in the bottom of that, but that sediment is in fact in the effluent and should be sampled in a representative manner. And then finally, I do want to point out that this, you say like, oh, well, you're only off by 1/10 of a pH point, but your flow rates are in the 7 to 12 million gallons per day, right? million gallons per day. These are big numbers. So essentially, and that doesn't include all the water in the aquifer. So how many gallons of water is off by 1/10 of a point, and what's the overall effect on the Truckee River, right? Mass, flow rate times mass can be a giant number. So there's a fair amount of whatever chemicals are causing that pH to be off. There's a fair amount of those in a mass space going into the Truckee River. And finally, I did want to mention that Lane mentioned to his board something along the lines of, well, these are these are pH violations, not quote unquote chemical violations. And of course, pH is driven by chemicals. So this isn't as though like this is some like magical ether. These are chemicals in the water that are causing ionization of the water molecules. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Blake.
So these violations are in our permit to the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board that regulates the agency. So all those violations have been reported to them. I know Lahontan has the authority to issue notices of violations, including fines and other corrections that agencies have to do. It's not uncommon for collection systems that have spills to be fined, and for treatment plants that have discharge violations to be fined or issued other things. I'm just curious, they're the ultimate regulator that oversees this. What has been the response from the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board about these effluent violations to the permit?
Of the pH, they have considered them as minor violations.
Okay.
And we have not been fined in any way, shape, or form.
Thanks, Mike.
Michael, could you provide their feedback on their turbidity violation as well?
As far as, yes, that their feedback for the turbidity was that since we've taken corrective actions to address the turbidity issue with the sample sink, they didn't feel that it was a representative sample. It wasn't representative of our effluent quality.
And Dale, we have another comment from Susie Tarnay. Susie, would you wish to address your comment?
Okay, go ahead.
No, I just had a question. So isn't the change in outcome an indication that the soil treatment process is no longer a viable treatment option? We haven't come to the conclusion of what's been happening. So why are we continuing to use that process?
As far as the soil treatment process, that is where our discharge goes through the ground. And as of right now, it is written into our WDR that is one of our treatment processes. And we do have reductions in and changes in polishing of our effluent for certain constituents. The nitrogen, the total nitrogen is reduced from the effluent to well 31 in the ground. But we believe that small amount of nitrogen that's left in the effluent, even after we treat it with our BNR, which is a biological nutrient removal system, which oxidizes ammonia, and then we denitrify and remove as much of that ammonia as we can through the system with that process that was added in 2006. We still have some forms of nitrogen that get out into the ground, and then in effect, the microbes that are in the soil that start to change those constituents are still at times, along with the inflow from groundwater, affecting the pH. We also get reductions in COD, which is chemical oxygen demand, which is the way you measure the strength of wastewater. The benefits of it going through the ground is Dan had alluded to earlier, is that we have a lot of there's a lot of positives to having your effluent travel through the ground before it makes it to the waterway. Does that answer your question? Does that help?
Thanks for to address the question. I'm just concerned.
And can you mute?
In the ground as a process, but there's no way to sort of, it's like we're using it as a filter, for example, not specifically, but then there's no way to clean that filter. And so at a certain point, it's not, I know it's not a filter, but at a certain point, as a metaphor, that filter is going to become less effective. And that's what I'm concerned about. These are indications that that's happening.
Hey, Mike, our other option is to discharge directly to the river, though, right? And that just seems completely counterintuitive as being something that would be beneficial to surface water quality, to run our tailpipe from the plant directly to the river as opposed to running into the ground first.
Yes. And we also have in our master planning, we have space put aside, other property put aside, that if this disposal field was to have a catastrophic failure, or if we, as you say, stop filtering, we have provisions to be able to put in further disposal fields in other locations that would give us the benefit of that newer location. Again, we're meeting, except for that 1/10 of a pH, and I'm not downplaying it, but we are meeting our discharge requirements that were set forth by the Lahontan Regional Water Quality Control Board. And these are very stringent discharge requirements that they want to make sure we're keeping the Truckee River clean, and so do we. So I hope that helps. We did at one point, when this first started happening with these pHs, we tried to mitigate the pH in the groundwater with chemicals. We tried to put caustic into the water to increase our effluent pH. And because it's such a large body of water that's out under the ground, we saw basically no significant or any change in the pH value out in the ground. And we feared that we were actually adding TDS, which is something that's less desirable that we want to add to the ground. So we stopped doing that and just again stopped putting any extra ammonia. We're treating as much ammonia as we can through our systems. Susie, I hope that helped.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments before we move on? Seeing none and hearing none. What's up, Jay?
Good morning, directors again. So before you is engineering report. In the month of July, engineering staff continue to work on the list of projects that are there: Hotel Avery, Master Sewer Plan, 2019 roof repair, 2020 admin building remodel, 2020 cordon, 2020 digital scanning, 2020 headworks, 2020 plant painting, and then about, let's see, it looks like 8 2021 projects that we've kicked off. And the work orders are shown and some photos are attached. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Jay? Anyone? Seeing none and hearing none. Thank you very much, Jay.
You're welcome.
What's up, Richard?
Morning again, President Cox and Board of Directors. So again, maintenance has been helping support the roofing project and painting project. A big project that we took on was removing a root ball out on TRI. While we weren't 100% successful, we did put a good dent in it. I want to really thank the staff from TSD that helped us out there, both their video crew and their line cleaning crew. They were out there all day with us and gave us 110%. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to acknowledge them. And that part of the painting project was dismantle primary or secondary 3, which we did. We did install a new blower at BNR, which included a new in-house designed water cooling system that's proving out to be very successful and may help solve some of those ongoing issues that we've had with the blowers failing at BNR due to heat. Continue to enhance some of the stuff we've been doing down there on blower 5 with a new air intake. We received the centrifuge back, got it installed, and it started back up, and it's back in service, performing well. And we've continued on a couple of various lighting projects that we've had. Work orders are shown. I do want to point out that we've added a fleet aspect to that, as we are now up and live in Lucity with fleet, doing work orders through there. So we'll add that as a tracking point for you to see. Any questions?
Any questions for Richard? Thank you, Richard. What's up, Bob?
Good morning, members of the board. The IT department has been working with the other departments to support TTSA summer projects and work. We have been working with engineering to provide a solution to the IT demands for the admin building remodel project, which includes storing all the IT equipment, providing alternative workstations on site, and equipping displaced staff with remote work equipment. With operations and electrical and instrumentation department, IT has assisted in the installation and the implementation and completion of the 2 new VFDs, one for the BNR backwash return pump and the other for the CAM sludge transfer pump. We are continuing on the electronic logbook migration to the plant information system. We will have initial installation and testing done next week. And the position of the IT specialist closed at the end of July. And we are actively reviewing the job applicants for this new position. We'll be starting our first round of virtual interviews by the end of the month. Any questions?
Any questions for Bob? Seeing none and hearing none.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. How about director's comment? Blake, what do you have to say?
Let's do Rochelle and LaRue first.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, LaRue. Sorry to skip over you, buddy.
That's okay. We'll let Rochelle conclude the department reports, and then I'll follow that up with the general manager report.
All right. Rochelle?
Thank you.
Rochelle?
Thank you. Nothing additional to report that isn't already listed on my report in the packet. The accounting department has been continuously working on the pre-audit that we've been doing virtually this year, and will continue into September. And they are also working on reconfiguring the funds within Cassell for the change of the fund with the fund policy and the general fund, which we'll continue to see in next month's board packet. Also in July, we had the billing to the tax roll, and I did not provide that final information to you in this packet, but I will make sure to have that final information for you next month. And that's all we've been working on. Not all, but it's been definitely keeping staff busy, and that's all I have.
Okay, LaRue, what about you?
Yeah, the general manager's report is on page 374 of those on the electronic format. No additional changes other than to identify that I put down that management staff had a facility tour for various individuals. We've had some interest from the public in regards to recent articles. So I've extended an invitation for those to come approach me and our staff to answer any questions they have, and then when appropriate, apply a tour. I had anticipated having one when this was prepared, but unfortunately, due to circumstances, it was canceled. So hopefully we'll be able to have those tours prior to our next upcoming board meeting. Other than that, nothing other, anything else to report other than what's already written here.
Any questions from LaRue, from staff or board members? Seeing none and hearing none. Okay, Blake.
Are we on director's comments, Dale?
Yes.
Okay. I was just curious. I don't really have much, but you know, there continued articles out there about kind of wastewater epidemiology and testing for COVID in the sewage stream to spot community spread of the virus. Just curious, you know, again, whether there's been any inquiries outside of, you know, myself with the agency, and, you know, if you guys are tracking that and if you actually foresee that eventually coming to Truckee.
I can speak on behalf of any inquiries I've received. I've received correspondences of other locations performing tests associated with COVID. And they have not reached out to see if we would perform that, but if they should, we would be more than willing to do so. I don't know if you've received any inquiries, Michael, on your end.
No, I have not.
And again, just for the public, misconstrued, these aren't individual tests of wastewater workers. This is actually sampling the wastewater itself, because the virus, although not a threat to the wastewater workers, does carry potentially the COVID virus, and they're using wastewater treatment plants as a you know, early detector possibly of community spread. So okay, I'm just curious. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Blake?
I'd like to comment on that real quick. This is
Who
Pippin
is
Mater.
this?
This is Pippin Mater. I just wanted to say I support you, Blake. I think that's a really good idea to go to test for COVID RNA in the sewage, and it gives a better indication about what's going on with our community. And it's a valuable additional resource that TTSA can provide to the community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pippin. Going on ahead to John Northrup. Any comments, Johnny?
Looks like he is muted. Go ahead, John.
No comment. I'm fine.
Lane?
Looking forward to the Carrillo report on the, you know, with the organizational change, organizational report in the survey. So I'm hoping to see that next month or whenever, when it can be done.
Hey, Dan, any comments?
One question. I think, Dale, you and I got appointed to a subcommittee of the board to interface with staff in Carrillo on the org study. I think it's a question to LaRue as to when we can expect to have that subcommittee meeting.
As I understand it, right now, Carrillo is working with Michael Peake to do some assessments of his departments. And there's been a delay in a lot of that work simply because of the COVID pandemic. It's limited their staff's ability to travel. So as of right now, I always anticipate it'll be the next upcoming month. But I do not have a definitive answer for you. I do suspect it'll be the next upcoming couple of months.
Okay, and then a follow-up comment to Blake's question on whether, I think Blake's question was whether or not we had received requests or interest in doing, I guess, COVID, I'm not sure what the term is, if it's testing or analysis of the waste stream to see if there's evidence of COVID in it. I would think that would be the kind of information that if someone was interested in it, it would probably be the health department of either the state of California or one of our counties. I think right now it's well known that, you know, the COVID virus is circulating in Nevada County and Placer County in the region that we serve. My understanding of the value of that information is if there's some opinion that there may be a region that doesn't have the virus circulating, that testing the waste stream would be a macro level of confirming that or not. We know it's in the region right now, so I'm not sure that confirming it through the waste stream at this point in time would give our county health officials information that they don't currently have. So I just wanted to make sure that, you know, the conversation we're having doesn't inadvertently cause staff to think that we're giving them direction to go put the wheels in motion to start doing this. I think we should be open to it, but I think we need to make sure that there's a good purpose to it that's benefiting our county health officials or state health officials if they think they need it. So I'll stop at that.
Thanks, Dan.
Dale? You're muted again, Dale.
I'm sorry. At this stage of the game, we've concluded all items on the agenda for this month, and we have some closed session items. How do you wish to proceed,
I had a public
Rochelle?
comment. I had a public comment on that last director's comment, if you don't mind, Dale. I'll be quick.
Who is this?
This is Pippin. Sorry, this is Pippin Mater.
Okay.
I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to say that I support Lane and his continued push for this survey. I appreciate that, Lane, and that I want to reiterate that it's still there's a need for an anonymous, consistent, repeatable survey, but that's still there's no contract in place to make that happen, and that really is essential. And so I really appreciate that, Lane. Thank you.
Okay, if there's nothing else to be brought before this August the 19th, 2020 meeting, we're going to adjourn to closed session. Rochelle?
Yes. Well, we'd like to make a.
What do we do? What do we do?
Motion to adjourn and close this meeting. And then we have a separate meeting invite for directors only.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Oh,
And a second from Northrup.
yep.
Roll call, please.
Dan Wilkins,
Yes.
John Northrup,
Yes.
Blake Tresson,
Yes.
Lane Lewis,
Yes.
President Cox.
Yes.
Okay, motion approved to adjourn the regular TTSA Board of Directors meeting at 11:37 a.m. Motion approved. Thank you, everyone, and we will now close this meeting and go into closed session. I guess probably take a 5-minute break if anyone wants to do so. Thank you. And if you need, I can go ahead and resend the information for you.
Yeah.
This conference will now be